Today we're talking to the owner of the farm that Johnny Cash called the center of the universe. This place belonged to him for decades, and now it's owned by Brian Oxley. We're in the interview today. Johnny Cash's nephew comes walking through the door. Mark Cash is here with us as well. So he sat down and he gave us some great stories and insight into his uncle. We're going to talk to Brian today about some really exciting stuff too, like the fact that he was raised in Japan and has a lot of insight about the bathrooms there.
From the farm that Johnny Cash called the center of the universe, this is the Jack Vale Podcast.
I like Willie and I like Waylon. You want me to ride? You gotta play some George Jones and Conway Twitty. Just keep it country cause I'm here, Billy. Like a little bit of hip-hop and give me some Man in Black. You can kiss my cash.
We are broadcasting this from the farm that Johnny Cash called the center of his universe. If you hear any noises coming from the outside,
hey, that's farm noise.
It's farm noise, and
you gotta go with farm noise.
Yeah, we do, and we have said, he's going to go out and get some footage of this right now. There's just stuff going on. So at one point, we were like, "Listen, it's a farm. If a cow comes walking through here or something, it's totally okay. Whatever the farm noises are." But anyway, that's where we are, and we're just going to have a good time. But I'm excited about this episode because the reason now it got quiet. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
The reason I really wanted to do this was you are now. Don't say anything. Just listen to me. You are a fascinating person to me. I don't know what that is. That's a pretty... Is that a farm noise, Brian?
That's a farm noise. Hey, you know
It's
a
like
lot about
scraping
farm noise.
Yeah.
But don't worry, there's no methane involved here.
Okay.
It's just, hey, these guys are some of the hardest workers from this town.
Oh, I know. I know, yeah.
When you get a good worker,
Yeah.
they're as precious as gold.
No, I understand. Actually, let me tell you something, okay? You have an employee, okay?
Right.
I'm not going to say who it is. I don't want to get anybody, but he starts, the first letter of his first name is W. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
My first encounter with this person, he was so mad at me because we went into the museum and I didn't do the door thing right. And the alarm went off and he had to be called to come and shut the whole thing down, He was, you could see it on his face, Brian. He was and I called you and I'm like, I was kind of like scared about it. I'm like, this guy, he doesn't like me. He's really mad at me and everything. And now, I really like the guy and he really likes me too, I can tell. But, that was the initial thing.
Right.
But you explained to me that you had him because there was really nobody better for what he does.
Right.
Because he's so it reminded me of what you're saying about these guys out there doing what they're doing. When you find good work, like good help, it's really hard to,
you gotta,
let that go.
You got to protect them.
Yeah.
When I was in business, and the hardest people to manage in a big corporation are salesmen.
Mm.
Most salesmen, you're not going to want them marrying your daughter. I mean, these are guys.
Why is that?
Well, if you're a salesman, you're a closer. Closer means you get the sale done.
Mm.
That doesn't mean you're the best presenter. You're a closer. And when you're a closer, you'll do things to get the job done, the sale done, that really is on the edge. In fact, they actually have a law to protect salesmen because they'd all end up in jail because they always stretch
The truth?
The truth. That's the nature of the beast because, they got to convince people that this is the most wonderful product in the world.
Mm.
It may not be,
Mm-hmm.
but they'll say it. A good salesman will.
Yeah.
So, I've always, one time I had several salesmen under me, but they brought the blood into the business because there is no business without customers.
Yeah.
So as much as some of these guys, you wouldn't want to go out to dinner with them, all that kind of thing, you know, they're the front lines. Without them, there's no growth, no nothing.
Yeah.
So, you know, you can't be selective because everybody's different. And certain, you know, salesmen's wired differently than an accountant, for instance,
Yeah.
you know.
So, by the way, I have Brian Oxley here. And I want to get into how I know Brian so that you understand who this person is. And then I want to get some stories from you and ask you some questions and stuff. But we are at the farm that Johnny Cash called the center of his universe when he owned this farm for what, 30 years?
30 years.
30 years. So
we call it the center of the universe.
The universe, yeah.
Where gravity starts.
Okay. All right.
And it's on TV, so it can't be denied.
I've seen some videos of like the Christmas special that he did was filmed out here for like for a major network. I have to tell you, as a fan myself of his music and also the whole story of just redemption and I mean so many things. It's amazing to be out here walking around and then watch clips of him here and go, oh, he stood right there. Wow, this is kind of a crazy thing. So Brian is the owner of the farm. Basically, there is who's the you know the beer guy that is the most Ben, Mac, Jake, the beer guy who is the most interesting man in the world, they call him. Wait, you guys know what is it called? Dos Equis? That's a beer brand? And the whole marketing thing with this dude, he's an older guy, and he's the most interesting man in the world. Do you understand why he's the most interesting man in the world? I don't even know. Supposedly. Okay, so when I knew about this guy, but I don't know a lot about that kind of stuff. But when I met Brian, I'm like, wait a minute. This is my first impression of you was when you were in Hendersonville at Johnny Cash's parents' home. The Mama Cash House, it would be called. And it had a plaque of a quote that Marty Stewart, it was filled with these iconic pictures of the Cash family around the table and all this stuff. And that's where you and I first met. And what was supposed to be maybe a 45-minute visit ended up, I remember it, and it was hours. I think I was there for 5 or 6 hours that first day. And one thing led to the next. So it wasn't just, here's somebody who is preserving music history and you know, taking care of this house. It was, oh, you own a farm too? And this is, you know, Johnny's farm. And then it was so many other things too. I found out that you're a children's book author. Not only are you, and it's not one of these things where you like had a bunch of manuscripts like hidden in the closet or up in a thing or whatever. There's one of them right now.
My first book, Grandpa's Time Out.
But you have legitimately not just like, again, like people say, oh, I'm an author, and they have their stuff piled away. No. Every one of his children's books they've been published. There's probably some that even haven't, but they've been published. The illustrations have been done. You got artwork. I mean, everything has been done with these things. And then you go from children's to, it's not just about Johnny Cash. It's also about music history in general, meaning Elvis and Colonel Parker and what happened there with Madison and Curls. I mean, I feel overwhelmed sometimes in how I explain to people who you are because I don't know where to begin. I've known you for a few years now, and even I'm learning something new every time I talk to you. Every single visit, there's something, oh, and I have this over here, and have you seen this? And I'm like, how come you didn't show me this before? There's always something new. So in a way, I don't know where to begin with all of this stuff, but we're just going to start and let's see where it goes. The first question I want to ask you is, before all of this, before Johnny Cash, before what you're doing now, you worked for you were with another company for many years. Tell me about that.
Okay. I worked for a public company called Service Master.
I've seen the trucks.
Yeah.
Or the vans.
The trucks, they also have a multi-billion-dollar hospital business. They have pest control, Terminex, name it. And I was with them for 30 years, which is amazing because we were growing so fast that it held my attention, because nothing really holds my attention for 30 years. And one of my most exciting opportunities was to start a lot of those businesses in Japan, where I grew up and I speak the language.
Mm-hmm.
So I was one of the first Americans to actually go on a public board of a company in Japan. So, Japan, I knew my way around. When you live there 30 years and you grow up in a village where you're the only Westerners is me and my brother and sister.
That seems random though. Didn't you grow up in Japan?
Yeah.
Oh, you grew up in Japan, and then later, after you're with Service Masters.
No, well, my whole life started in Japan.
Right.
And then obviously when Service Master was looking to do something internationally, one of the first things you look for is, what language, do we have anybody with language skills? And so they asked me to head up the Japanese development. And right now you could go to any little town in Japan and you'll see a little Maids truck or a Terminex, or, we're in about 200 hospitals. Pretty much that whole Service Master portfolio of businesses started those in Japan.
Huh.
I mean,
what was your position? What was your title with the company?
Well, I had a lot of titles. One, I was president of the international group.
Wow.
We're in about 30 countries. Then I was president of the chief operating officer of the hospital business, which is one of our, hey, I say hospital, I know that sounds high level, but basically we're talking about cleaning, laundry, food service, things like that, services, it's the ancillary departments of a hospital. So I headed up that and had, over 10,000 people in my group. So that was, and then we started that business in Japan. I'll never forget the day, went to a Japanese hospital. Remember, there's no outside services of these types for Japanese hospitals. And I did the first selling. And you know why? Because every doctor in Japan wants to talk to an American.
Really?
Yeah. They all want to show their nurses they can communicate. And remember, in Japan, administrator of a hospital has to be a medical person, not like in the States. So I could tell, I'd prefer to speak in Japanese to get the deal done. But no, they keep responding in English. That's a real asset you have when you're in Japan, is that you're American. If you know something that they're interested in. And I sold several of the first hospitals.
Crazy. And you already knew so much about Japan because you could speak the language.
Yeah, the language
what is that called? Japanese?
Is really the key because, look, if you're in a high-level finance or something like that, the Japanese have their professionals that speak fluent English, and we have them over here. When you're in the cleaning business, not too many people are regarded in society as significant, let's just put it. So for instance, one of the biggest sales pitches I would do is, hey, we're not in the bucket business. We're not in the cleaning business. We're into caring for base patients. We're no different than you doctors. Now, in that society, people can't imagine that. There's such a gap between the elite, so to speak.
Yeah.
A doctor is like a god.
Yeah.
You don't give second opinions to a doctor, not in Japan. So, so basically we sold culture, the culture of a hospital.
Yeah.
How is a patient going to be the most satisfied?
I see.
I love that business, and it's still going. We're in at least 200 hospitals now.
But you're completely retired from that.
Well, yes, but no, because I have a brother who also speaks fluent Japanese, and to some degree, he's handling that now.
Got it. Wow.
So, he used to help me a lot out here, but I had to turn over those businesses in Japan to him.
Yeah. Okay. So the Japanese culture is really fascinating to me. Where's Okinawa?
It's the southernmost part of Japan, but it's not connected to the four main islands. It's off in the sea.
Oh, have you ever been there?
Yes.
You have been there?
Well, that was a big deal in World War II because...
I thought you were going to say Karate Kid.
Isn't that where that was where they were holding out?
Yeah.
And all the natives or the Japanese were told through propaganda that the Marines would come in and rape the women and do all this, which absolutely didn't happen. But they could actually, there's a famous hill where all these women would go up to that hill and jump off the hill and commit suicide.
Because they were afraid of that happening?
Yeah, because they believed it.
No way.
I mean, Westerners, we were, hey, when I first went to Japan, a little kid, we were so unusual. Remember, I went in the 50s. I mean, Japanese like to just kind of rub your arm because they're so curious about your hair on the arm. Or,
because my hairs get blonde in the sun.
Well,
and I love kids jumping on my lap.
If you're blonde, can you imagine if all of a sudden somebody showed up, defeated us in some war, and everybody in that country had green hair?
Oh, well, sure. Yeah.
It would be shocking.
Yeah,
So,
I get it.
My family, my dad was the tallest guy in a town of 30,000. I was up there. And, but the people treated us really good, but we were total novelties. I remember in Japan being down at the river fishing, and there'd be a bridge nearby, 20, 30 kids lined up looking down with curiosity of this Western boy. Now, that's not the way it is in the big city, but we were in a little village in the southern part of Japan.
Yeah. So, what do you prefer? Do you prefer the Japanese culture? I wanted to ask you that for a long time. The American culture or Japanese culture? Like, which country do you prefer?
Boy, that's a really hard one. I would say this. The food, definitely Japan.
Really?
And the food's a big deal.
Isn't it just sushi?
There's more variety in Japanese food than you can imagine. Sushi's
Really?
Just one. But what's interesting, when my family get together, missionary kids, we always spend at least a third of our time talking about Japanese food. So it's a big part of our...
Wow.
Yeah. And you have to understand, when you eat sushi in this country, you're not getting the best sushi. You're getting the low-level stuff because, you could go to the tuna market, where they get the tuna fish, and two fish next to each other, they look the same, and guess what? One could be $10,000 and another one $500. There's a difference in quality. So one of the things they do, they cut a little slice, smell it, play with, and the location from which the tuna would come. So Japanese food is a big part. The other thing is, even though I lived there close to 30 years, Japanese start by assuming you don't speak English. or Japanese. They can't. Americans are the opposite. We get frustrated if we go to London and we're trying to communicate to somebody and they're just going, "Don't you speak English?" Don't. I mean, that's the American way, right?
Yeah.
In Japan, I've been on a train where there's two Japanese sitting in front of me or my sister or brother, just talking about us. Never for a moment thinking that we would understand what they're talking about.
Hmm.
And I used to love to do it. Listen, listen, listen. And then at the right moment go, very interesting in Japanese. They go pale. So Japanese, they're a very homogeneous race.
What does that mean?
Homogeneous means everybody is kind of have a Japanese ancestry, where America is very diverse.
Oh,
You know, we
got
have
it.
Chinese, we have, you know, so many different, we're a melting pot here.
Yeah.
Japan, almost everybody is Japanese. And it's almost impossible to get a Japanese citizenship.
So
Even
a boy like you growing up there was you stuck out like a sore thumb. You,
Stuck out like a sore thumb, but there's a lot of advantages in it because we're a curious, you know, they're curious.
uh-huh.
They like talking to Americans.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
You could ask anybody in Japan pretty much on the train where if you're lost and ask directions and they'll tell you and they'll walk with you. They'll be so helpful.
Really?
Oh yeah, because they want Westerners to view them positively.
Hmm.
And the Japanese, you need to understand, truly love the Americans.
Hmm.
And the reason is because after the war, there was this great tension between Japan and Russia. Because remember, we gave up Okinawa. Of course, we took it over. We gave back all the properties that we occupied. For all practical reasons, General MacArthur was the emperor of Japan, but not the Russians. They still have the little islands that they took over, and they got bases on them. And not to mention, historically, there was a big war between Japan and Russia. So so if you're on a taxi and they say, "Where are you from?" and you say, "I'm an American," or they smile. But try telling them you're a Russian. It's a whole different conversation.
Really?
Yeah, the history between Japan and Russia isn't that great. Well, first of all, they didn't give up the lands they took during the war.
Hmm.
They got them all.
Mm-hmm.
That's one great thing about America is that, once there's peace and it's over, we give them back their land. So
What's the because the cultures everywhere you go, the cultures are different in certain ways. Like it might be the food or whatever. What is the experience of going to the bathroom? You're in public at a Japanese mall or a store or something like that. You go to the bathroom. What is that experience like compared to what it's like here?
Well, the bathroom, you just picked a pretty interesting subject. The Japanese are probably more fixated on bathrooms than any culture in the world. Okay.
Why?
Have you heard the company Toto? It's the number one. It'd be like in America, well, what's the counterpart? But they make all the amenities for the bathroom.
Oh, okay.
You
All
know
right.
what I mean?
All right.
And Toto technology is very, very advanced. Now, this journey of me in Japanese bathrooms is interesting because in the old days, you see a bus is stopped, everybody get out, everybody line up along the road and everybody do their thing. And that was very common. But now the big advancement is Japanese try not to use toilet paper. Okay?
Wow.
Yeah, this whole thing. And when this started, by the way, almost every home in Japan has the new technology. When they first came out with it, how do you present a new toilet concept with a pretty model? You can't. So you put a big gorilla on top of the toilet. That's how they started advertising. But their whole idea is you wash your hands, You wash your dishes. When you take a shower, you wash the dirt off your body. Why is it when you go to the bathroom that there's no washing going on?
That's such a good point.
Right. So, there you have it. And to them, they're so used to it. It's really an impediment to their travel because when they come to the States, they hate American bathrooms for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
One thing, like we bring all the Japanese over to our company to visit. They use the bathroom. Then they actually come to us and say, can we take a bus back to the hotel? And one of the things they hate is our doors in the bathroom don't go to the floor.
Oh, the stall sides?
Yeah. All of a sudden, they're already a little nervous about Westerners, and they see a size 16 shoe next to them, and they just can't get the job done. And not to mention, we've had politicians who have been arrested for responding to somebody tapping his foot in his stall. You know those cases. So the whole notion that they have to sit there, and you know what? I'm kind of grew up that way too in Japan. That really bothers me. To see a guy, the first thing I do when I go in the stall is any feet around. Okay, so that's a real problem. The other thing is, so what they do now is when they travel, a lot of them, they bring like this pump thing full of water so they can wash themselves, rather than.
Really?
Yeah.
Like one of those things that they sell at like Walmart or Target with the like the water squirter, and you suck up the water from the pool,
and then you
squirt each other with it?
Not each other.
What?
Yourself.
No, but I'm saying like the water toy thing that you suck up water and you're like, is it kind of like that?
But it's a little more professional and well designed. But the point is, to them, toilet with not wallpaper, but toilet paper makes absolutely no sense. And I totally agree. Another thing about the Japanese, I was in a friend's home in Japan, and I invited the CEO of ServiceMaster. This guy's running a $5 billion business. And he needs to take a bath. So he goes in, and we're all sitting out there waiting our turn. There's only one bath in a house. And we hear the water going glug, glug, glug. So what he had done is he's letting the water out. Now, you have to understand their tubs are big. Well, he thought he'd just jump in the tub and wash himself with all that grime and dirt and all that stuff. But in Japanese culture, you're supposed to wash yourself first, be totally clean, and then you go into the tub to soak, to relax. So now we all have to wait for the bath to be filled again.
Back up.
And he, of course, total innocence. He didn't know what's going on, but everybody out here was giggling and laughing because the idea to them to go into a bathtub and then soap up is disgusting.
You soak it in your own nastiness and filth. Yeah. $700 to $15,000 for a Toto toilet.
First of all, the Toto toilet, it has to be electrical. You got to tie it to power. Otherwise, how are you going to get the spray coming up?
I've always wondered how those things work.
No,
but there's like bidets and stuff like that.
Yeah, but even a bidet, the water has to be tied to power.
Oh, because something's got to be, because it's a pump, essentially.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That makes sense.
So, and I'm telling you, for senior citizens, you couldn't have anything better, really, to really
get the job
feel
done.
fresh,
Get the job done.
Mm-hmm. So the question is, then why is a Toto toilet not in every home in America?
Yeah, one time I got peanut butter on my arm. And you see how hairy these arms are?
Yeah.
And I immediately went for the sink because I knew a paper towel wouldn't be able to wipe off the peanut butter.
Right.
And it's the same exact thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
When's the last time you washed dishes with a dry towel and no water.
Yeah.
Now you're talking something
It makes sense.
more dramatic, okay?
Yeah.
So it's a common sense. So why do Americans not move towards it? I think, and I've heard, I don't know this for sure, but maybe there's a little bit of the Puritan ethic.
Like
Where
what?
there's something, maybe some people in their weird thinking thinks there's a sexual, there could be some stimulation with the water going up. Okay, now I will tell you this. I did have one installed in a company, and people did spend a lot more time in the bathroom. So, hey, I don't believe that. That's all folk. But that kind of tradition and history, I'm sure it's... now, listen, you don't understand how advanced it is in Japan now.
Really?
Not only do they have that, but they have that you sit on a heated toilet.
Ooh.
Very
My wife would
comfortable.
like that.
Right. And they also now have a button. Instead of going to the doctor, you want a report on your biology, it'll print it out.
Huh.
It'll evaluate
Where is this button? What do you mean, in your house?
Well, all the buttons are on the side.
Side of in the bathroom?
Yeah, in the toilet. I mean, this thing is like a cockpit.
Wow.
We're talking a cockpit with buttons. For instance, you can adjust.
That's why they're $15,000.
You can adjust it so, depending on your body shape, you may want the thing to move up a little, move back, heating. And not only that, and this sounds sick, but it actually blows your bottom.
What?
Blows on your bottom.
Okay.
So how else, if you're not using toilet paper, you got to have a little wind down there, right?
Sure. Yeah.
And it does it. You push a button and the wind blows. And
is it like this in even the smaller villages and stuff?
Yes,
Does
it's everywhere in Japan.
Really? Wow.
Toto, bathroom technology in Japan is considered like absolute.
When's the last time you've been back to Japan?
I haven't been there in several years, which bothers me. I used to go multiple times a year, but it's been several years. But let me tell you something that I used to like to do. I used to go to Edinburgh, okay? And this is in, Scotland. And you'd have these tour groups. A lot of amazing things happen historically in the church in Edinburgh. Some of the most beautiful churches, even though they're all empty. And you would hear these tour guides talking to the Japanese. And when Japan had high quality sewage system, hygiene was at the highest.
Mm-hmm.
They were ringing a bell in Edinburgh at a certain times so people can throw out their buckets of stuff.
Mm.
If you're on the 4th floor of a Georgian house, you go to a potty on the 4th floor, you're going to just throw it out on the street. In fact, it was so bad that tens of thousands of people died because they had rats everywhere.
Mm. Wow.
Can you imagine your first date with an umbrella trying to dodge?
Oh, yeah.
That was the level.
That's like San Francisco.
That was the level of hygiene in lots of the West.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I'm talking Europe now.
Wow.
And Japanese. So what's interesting as they tell these stories, what's most interesting, listening to Japanese speak to each other, is I can't believe it, and being shocked by that because they look to the West as really leading in so many areas, technology and so forth. But when it comes to hygiene,
they're clean. The Japanese are clean people.
They are clean
Sounds
people.
like.
People go to Japan, they'll tell you, I've never been to a country as clean as this.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
But you know why? You might say then, how come there's a business there for us? Because they value clean. They're interested in anybody's got an idea to make it cleaner.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you would think it's, everything's dirty, so they want to, no. People are happy with dirty stuff, don't want new ideas and services, but Japanese do.
Do they, how do the Japanese have like maids and stuff like that, like services that come, or do they do their cleaning themselves?
This is interesting. Japanese, especially in the old days, did have maids, that took care of everything.
Yeah.
Cleaning, cooking, and so forth, but not now. And but the Japanese have really incorporated cleaning in their curriculum, schools. You go to a Japanese school at a certain time, early in the morning, and a lot of the Japanese kids will be barefooted. They call them zokins. They're like rags, and the kids will wash the floor. Like you're running.
Yeah.
With your pressure on and you're running. So when it comes to the healthcare, it's different. But when it comes to schools, they require the kids to do a lot of the cleaning as a part of the curriculum, because cleaning is considered very important, especially in their Buddhist tradition. So yeah. This comes from a religious thing.
Yeah. So what do you think the percentage is? I forgot about that. What do you think the percentage is of the Japanese who are Buddhists?
Okay. Well, first, let me start with Christians, less than 0.5%
In Japan?
Yes.
Really?
But
wow. So, but you grew up you were a missionary kid. So your parents were wow, I didn't realize
it's
that.
it's probably the least penetrated market in terms of Christianity. Whereas you go to Korea, it can be 40% of the population are Christians.
It really?
Yes. Korea that's the biggest faith in Korea is Christianity. But the thing about Japan is, remember, they had an emperor, and he was their god. So after they lost their war, and the emperor had to basically bow to General MacArthur, they knew he wasn't God anymore. And I think since World War II, they have the tradition of Buddhism. Shintoism is their national religion. They do have that tradition, but they're not serious Buddhists or serious Shinto people. Like you go to Thailand, the Thai people are serious Buddhists. You just watch any video on Thailand, they're serious. Japan, I say they're more like into materialism because we pretty much wiped out Tokyo. Not the nuclear bomb, but we carpet bagged, all of Tokyo was burned to the ground. So, they started from scratch, and it was all about building the nation back. And look what they've accomplished.
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes, I think, from work ethic. They're hardworking people. They're very serious about their work.
What's the humor like over there compared to American culture? Like what do they think is funny? Because every place is different. It seems like the British will come out with stuff that I just don't get it. A lot of people won't understand it, and then a lot of our stuff is not funny to them. So what's it like in Japan?
Well, their humor is more along the line of your humor. It's visual or visceral. Japanese, like
fart humor, you mean? Like farts, fart jokes and stuff like that?
Anything about the body.
Okay.
The Japanese are into bodies.
Okay.
Like when I see my friends, the first thing they do is grab me here and just go, man, you put weight on, or you haven't, or you're skinny. I just had a podcast with Japan with some business guys. Oh, now your face is skinny. Next time it's big. They're very always talking about the body, and they think that's funny, okay? So you could tell a really cool joke, but you hit your head on the wall, now you got them laughing. The line I used to use, I had this one guy in business in America. He'd tell 20 jokes, and you hate to translate those because none of them go over. So I would tell a few, and then I would tell everybody, look, when I say joke, you better laugh because you don't want to offend. And they go, ha, ha, ha. That's the joke, not the, you know, they don't like hearing the jokes with the punchline and all that kind of stuff, you know.
Really?
So,
they like-
you know, it's like Three Stooges stuff.
Yeah.
You've seen Japanese
slapstick stuff.
slapstick.
Yeah, I've seen it. You could go on YouTube and you can type in like Japanese game shows. Those are the best.
Yeah.
Some of them are wildly inappropriate.
Right?
Okay,
Yeah,
can I tell you one that I
Yeah.
saw? Tell me if you've seen this video. I saw a Japanese game show. This is my favorite one. And there's this guy. Instead of winning prizes, you get totally screwed over if you lose. That's the point of the Japanese game shows is instead of like, there's a car on you might win a car. It's like, no, you might lose your wife. It's really bad stuff. And there was this guy who they put on a conveyor belt. And here he was on a conveyor belt and they put him in like a like a G-string or like some ridiculous underwear. And they had him bend over. Okay, so you have a guy on his hands and knees here on a conveyor belt that slides like this. And the contestant on the game show was sitting here and he had like, he was strapped. Oh, he was strapped behind his back like this, okay? So he had to like answer questions. And every time he got a question wrong, this guy got a little bit closer to him. And all this guy has is like, and he doesn't do a very good job on the show. And pretty soon it's like, and he's going like this. Oh, it is the wildest stuff.
My mother, we had a time in Japan, my mother and brother, and of course, because of the Japan thing, I tell Japanese jokes, you know. And my mother, one time she just started crying. She says, that's one, and she loved Japan. She committed 50 years of her life there, worked so hard, real servant, but she just hated Japanese humor. And when she heard us kids, so she literally told me and my brother, you know, I'm in my 50s. I need to talk to you guys. And go upstairs, and your dad would not have been proud of you. You know, okay. So anyway, but you know, it's a very different kind of humor.
Was it she was referring to like the inappropriateness of
the
it?
potty jokes.
Yeah, yeah.
These are not actually, a lot of American jokes are, in my opinion, far worse, but it's potty jokes.
What would your mother have thought? I remember when she passed away.
Yeah.
Because I knew you then. And you're shopping with her in Walmart and she hears a fart noise and she turns around and here I am. Does she laugh or does she not think it's funny?
She would never laugh. She'd go right up to you and give you a lecture.
A lecture?
A lecture.
Tell me what she would say.
Well, like for instance, you know, we would bring her to Johnny's stage over here and we'd sing songs and she'd go up to Mark Cash or any of the, I just wish you'd sing some Christian songs.
Oh,
you know, Amazing Grace. Could you just have one? Okay, now she liked country music. I think she was pretty good.
Yeah.
But she wanted gospel blended in there because,
man.
Look at it. She spent her whole life.
Sure. Mission,
preaching,
100%. Yeah,
that's her whole life.
I get it.
And so to her to hear a concert with no gospel to her is, but my mother was tough. She was my teacher. You know, she taught me at home.
Yeah.
And she'd go right up to you and go like this. And it's not one of those you could joke your way out of it. She'd be serious.
Wow.
I never let her listen to your shows.
No, you didn't. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I saved you from that.
A little bit like Grandma Vale. She adapted though and thought that what I did was funny, but she would be my mom was very, I think my mom passed away, I think about less than a year after yours did. And my mom was, she would walk up to the kids if they were listening to something that she didn't like.
Yeah.
Or she'd say, I don't like that. Or I think you should play a Christian song, you know.
You know what my mother's big thing was with the family? That we honor her husband. she would talk about my dad so much that I started feeling uncomfortable. Mom, Dad is not God. He's not perfect. But your father, our whole life, she built my father up, which is really interesting because it's in such contrast to a culture right now where everybody's trying to get the father and the male figure lessened or less valuable. My mom, and I think that was that generation, she didn't care what we thought of her. She wanted us to respect my dad or father. In fact, it's kind of weird. A lot of people call their dads dad. I never did. I always called him father because my mother said, you call your father father, which is, there's some question because the Bible, I'm not even sure if wants us to call our fathers father, but it was always about the respect thing. And boy, you know, and we used to get so upset as kids because she would go to a little talk. Missionaries get little chances. And all the time she'd be talking about us kids and how much we love our father.
Yeah.
Everybody's, you know, like, thank you. But anyway.
Yeah.
And he was a great man too, you know, of course.
Do you think you will still eventually be able to go back and visit Japan again, or do you think that's it?
I don't know. Right now once a month I do a talk show, like a podcast. Not what did they have those where they have a group talking thing where I get a whole group of businessmen.
Like a conference?
Yeah,
or a
call.
conference
you know?
call? Yeah.
Yeah, and they ask me questions, and so I keep in touch that way.
Yeah, yeah.
But, you know, I'm trying to make this farm happen.
So, yeah, let's talk about the farm for a minute. So, what was it that, like, how did you become the owner of this place?
Okay.
How did you find out about it? How did you even know it was a possibility? Because if I remember correctly, did you own this house first and then you bought the Hendersonville place?
No,
or
the opposite.
the opposite? Okay, so once you bought the farm, I remember some of the stories that you've already told me, but I'm really curious just to know, like, how it even became in the realm of possibility.
Okay. I have a friend, his name is Joe Richie. At one point, he was probably the greatest option trader in America. He, like me, he was a missionary kid, but he was a missionary kid to Afghanistan. We were best friends. I used to wrestle. He used to come to my wrestling meets, week in college. And I went to his office, and I actually have the picture. You should show it in Johnny's house there of different characters that he respected. You know, football players, preachers, you know, people who are movie stars. And then amongst those, he had this picture of Johnny Cash.
Yeah.
A painting that he commissioned.
Yeah.
I did not know who Johnny Cash was. I know people have a hard time believing it. I may have heard his name. I would never say I never heard his name. But remember, I'm a missionary kid. I lived in Japan. So I said, who is he? He sent me the American link to Johnny Cash's American songs.
Oh, yeah. Oh, from the American label? The American Records?
Yeah. You know, the where you have
the
when
later
man comes
stuff.
around.
Yeah.
And then I listened to it and got very obsessed with it. Was excited because I felt there was a lot more depth to his music than some of the truck songs I've been listening to. But there's actually a miracle to this. So we were at a Christmas party and we were all together, and my nephew told me, you know, I heard that Johnny Cash's parents' home was for sale. Well, I had just heard this music. My best friend sent it to me. And I researched it. Within 2 weeks, I bought his parents' home. And all I was doing is, I'm a missionary kid. I didn't grow up in this land, never kissed a girl, the whole thing. There's a lot of things you don't get to do when you're living in a conservative country like Japan.
Yeah.
No parties, no dances. And I said, I got to connect with this man. He was already gone, of course. And for that reason alone, I bought the place.
Hmm.
Then I got obsessed, as you know, my personality. And the last person that owned it had made a lot of modifications. So I had it all restored to the original state.
Yeah.
And that's how it all started. Then, of course, I met a lot of the Cashes would come there. They'd have Thanksgiving there. They'd have Christmas.
How did that happen? If the Cashes, so members of Johnny Cash's family.
Yes.
You're talking about his kids, maybe like
Cindy
who?
Cash, Mark Cash.
His nephew.
His nephew, Thomas, Gabriel, all these people.
Thomas is his grandson.
Yeah.
Okay,
his
so they would
oldest
come by the
grandson.
house. How is it that they would spend Thanksgiving at the house if you owned the house?
Actually, when they did, I never wanted to be a part of that.
Uh-huh.
I just said use the farm. And whoever was heading that up for that year, they'd organize and they'd have their own party.
So all this time after their mom and after Johnny and June had passed, they could come back to the property and
That's
spend like family gatherings. Yeah, that's unbelievable.
yeah.
Wow.
But, now look, I've learned so much about country music. I didn't understand music, that world. And I'm a business guy and a corporate business guy, which meant we were dealing with literally millions of customers, especially in the residential market.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, if a customer got mad, wasn't happy, that was always a priority. If you look at organizations, it should be the customers are first, maybe shareholders next, employees, that's kind of how you look, but customers are way up there. It didn't take long for me to learn that in this music industry, they don't have customers, they have fans. And fans are not the same as customers because the fan is always below the star, whereas a customer is always should be above the CEO. Okay.
That's really
And
interesting.
that culture difference really shocked me. And I had some bad times because I would make some calls. Hey, we're doing all this stuff. I'd like to meet you. And I didn't get the response that I would have expected considering what we were up to. It was very hard until I understood. That's one of the scariest things. And I love country music now, but there's nothing closer to idolatry than music, Hollywood stuff. The Bible talks about it, I mean, for goodness sake, they call them stars because fans, and of course now some insiders have shared with me there's names for fans. And some are really mean. They call them germs, people that are just always attached to you, And I thought, that's not fair to the fans.
Yeah.
They're the ones that are paying the bill, paying the money. And I've had so many people come out here to the farm and, hey, I bought this stuff, 30, 40 years ago, thinking that record's worth something or whatever. And I try to buy everything I could just because I felt bad. But, hey, it's a business. And it's lovely and it's got a lot of songs about love, but it's a business.
Yeah.
And of course, other corporations has business too, but there's something about how a fan is treated. Now, most fans don't care.
Mm-hmm.
They love these people, right?
Yeah.
They'll pay $500,000 and swoon over these artists. And of course, the stage, think of the stage. It's always higher than where the fans are. Not always, but most often.
Mm-hmm.
You're above the fans, right?
Yeah.
So anyway, and by the way, one of the few super exceptions to that was Johnny Cash.
What do you mean?
He was a humble man. I've seen it. I've heard every story. I know his faults. I know his issues with drugs. I know it all, but I know one thing. He had real humility. And I've seen this through so many stories. And I think that's why God loved him so much. Think of King David in the Bible. Oh my gosh, he killed a man. All the things he did, slept with a man's wife, the whole thing. But God loved him because he had a tender heart. And he loved God. Johnny Cash loved God. That's one thing I know for sure. So people ask me this and that and everything, and I said, well, I don't know, but I know one thing, he loved God.
I'm a big fan of Little House on the Prairie. And you know that especially over the last few days because we've been talking a lot about that. There's one episode in particular, it's called The Collection. And Johnny Cash and June were the stars of this episode. It's one of my favorite episodes. There was nothing like seeing Johnny Cash riding right into the episode, right in the opening credits, Little House on the Prairie. He sees a stagecoach, traipsing off, and he's got to go like save the day and rescue Reverend Alden, who has just been attacked by somebody, and he's bloodied and battered in the stagecoach, and he slows the horses down, and it was such a cool episode to see what really, to see this guy, like, he was a good actor in it. And June was great too.
Yeah.
And recently, because of our conversations, I hear him.
Okay, let me explain.
We're gonna have to, huh? Yeah, let's
can I
get
have
him.
a
Let's get him
water?
on. Bring him over.
But I'm going to tell you one thing.
Let me
Okay, go
hold
ahead.
that thought. Let me just say, we have visitors. So if there's voices, you can hear them. Is there a noise gate on this right now or no? Okay. So it's fine because they're going to get closer and it is going to be a little louder, which is fine. We're just going to keep going. But for those of you who are wondering what the heck's going on, this is a real working farm and the Johnny Cash farm. So on the other side of all of these cameras, on the other half of the barn, okay, there is the official one piece at a time car. Okay, the only one in this is the one based on the song, One Piece at a Time. And so every once in a while, there's a group who is going to come in and they're going to look at it and check it out, get pictures with it, all that kind of stuff. So do you feel any sense of obligation to go say hi or anything like that? Or are we still good?
Well, I'm just keeping my, hello.
Okay.
We have people literally from Europe. They'll come and they say, we came to see the car.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah. There's something about a story car, especially one about a little guy beating the big company that Americans love. Now and then, I've given people rides. And one person I'll never forget is this young lady. Gave her a ride, and she talked about how much her dad loved the car. And the whole time she's in the back, she's saying, she was just bawling like a baby, saying, if my dad could just see me from heaven in his favorite car, his favorite song.
Wow.
It moves a lot of people because their dads and grandpas love this song,
Yeah, yeah. That's the big thing. Do you find that that's like one of the top couple of things people want to see is that car?
First, I still think it's the land.
The land, okay.
There's something about the land. It's spiritual.
Yeah.
And they know Johnny walked this land.
Yeah.
Then I said it's the car and of course, his home.
Right.
This is the only place you can come and actually see his home.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We've had people arrive, and before they even come into the house, they break down crying.
Wow.
I think all of that. One is the respect for Johnny Cash. They knew with all his makes, at his core, he was a good man. And probably every American right now is wishing we had somebody like him right now. His voice, we need his voice right now. But I think the other thing is he loved God. And he was uncompromising in his faith. And the Bible says, this very property was created by God. And he knew that this was made for man. And God's everywhere in this, but whether it's in the birds or in the trees And I think people just know that, and they've heard him sing so much gospel songs too. You know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's incredible. I just this Little House on the Prairie thing, because you were talking about what a humble man he was.
Yeah.
And so because of our recent conversations, I started doing a bunch of Google like searches or YouTube searches, and I found the Little House on the Prairie cast members from very recent like they have conventions and all this stuff. And Karen Grassley, who played Caroline Ingalls, Ma Ingalls, okay, on the show, did an interview recently and was like, they asked her what her favorite episode was or something, and she mentioned this episode, and she said she was so excited to get to meet Johnny and June, so she couldn't wait for them to show up to set. And she said everybody on set, nobody knew what to expect because these are big Hollywood, not Hollywood, but these are big musicians of a certain caliber, right? And so of a certain, hey, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, come on, sit by me for a second.
You want to sit here for a second? Hey, Shelby. How you doing?
Hey, Brian.
Doing a podcast here.
This is
good to see you. This is so random.
So this is Johnny Cash's nephew.
Yeah.
And he probably has the best voice
thank you.
in the family. It's an amazing voice.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
His dad was Tommy Cash.
Mm-hmm.
And he's been with us off and on, but mostly on for 8 years, right?
Yes, I have. Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he's part of the culture we've established here is people want to hear Mark.
No, thank you. Thank you. It's an honor. It is. It's amazing how many people still are interested in Johnny Cash and the family,
Yeah. The reason I'm laughing, I want you to know. It's so
I
random.
thought I wore a funny shirt or something.
No, you're about to open up about serious stuff maybe, and I start cracking up laughing. It's super uncomfortable because I hear the music on over there.
Yeah.
So we heard the group of people coming in to get pictures with the car and everything.
Right.
And then now there's music. So we're going to have we'll have an issue. We'll have a copyright problem, right?
Oh, I see.
With the music, right? So you got a noise gate that's pretty solid here. Okay, cool.
Okay.
No, but I want to
I
get
want
Mark
to take it
in.
back. Listen, I love that Mark just randomly popped in. Part of the documentary film Long Road Home too.
Right.
That's right.
And you got to hear him really talk and open up about life, being a member of the Cash family and stuff. And you came over the other day and said some great stories as well. It was just incredible listening to you talk about your uncle. So right before you walked in, Brian started to talk about how what a humble man your Uncle Johnny was.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you call him Uncle Johnny? Or did
I
you
did.
Johnny?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Was June the only one that called him John?
I think so.
Really?
Right. Yeah. The family called him JR. My dad called him JR.
Okay.
His daddy, Ray Cash, called him JR.
Okay.
June called him John.
June called him John.
John.
Yeah. That's, man.
But she was a trip, She was very funny on and off stage. She never changed. If you were in her living room, she acted like that. If you were on stage with her, she acted the same way.
Yeah. They were really like what you see is what you get, right?
They were.
It's funny though, because what I was just about to say was Brian was just telling me about how everything that he's learned over the years about him and about her has lined up with that. Like everybody has said that about them.
Yeah.
And I said, over the past few days, we've been talking a lot about Little House on the Prairie.
Yeah, right.
Now, random question, but I got to ask because nobody, I don't think on earth is as big of a fan of Little House on the Prairie than this guy.
Is that right?
Okay.
Right.
So you can imagine
Michael Landon.
the episode,
Right.
Michael Landon. Michael Landon was he was something, man. He was
Absolutely.
something. So I got to ask you, do you remember, this would have been in 1976, I think. Do you ever remember your uncle talking about his experience being on Little House on the Prairie or meeting Michael Landon or anything?
I do. He told me that was as real as could be. that they were sweet people, great actors and actresses, and that he had I think he said that was the best thing that he'd ever done, as far as meeting the right people. And Michael Landon, he loved Michael Landon.
Yeah.
He said Michael Landon was very kind and courteous and funny all the time, and welcomed you on the set, the whole thing, and that made my heart feel good too,
Yeah.
And my second, you didn't ask, but my second was Columbo.
Columbo.
Right, when he did Columbo with Peter Falk, of course.
Yeah.
And he killed
forgot, that's
Mother
right.
Maybelle Carter in June in the episode.
Okay.
And jumped out of an airplane. And Columbo thought something was funny.
Yeah.
And started asking, "Excuse me, sir, I've got a question." How Columbo did. And I'll never forget it because 2 weeks before it aired, Uncle Johnny called the family, and he said, "I want to show it on my brand new flat screen television." It had the blue, red, and the projector of it showed up on the screen. Do you remember that when they came out?
Yeah. Sure.
And we had popcorn and drank Pepsis and ate Reese's bars and watched that episode before it came out on national television.
Yeah.
And I thought he did a great job on Columbo.
Wow.
He played Tommy Brown, a gospel singer.
I've seen clips from it.
Yeah.
Never really watched Columbo, so I didn't see the whole thing. But in searching for different things that Johnny Cash did, I've seen clips of it. But Little House, I have every episode memorized.
Oh, you do.
So what I was telling Brian was, I literally did a search the other day and I found all these cast members from the show because they do conventions today and stuff.
Yeah.
And they started to talk about their experience working with them and how nervous they were because in the 70s, you're just like, listen, Johnny Cash is coming. Like that was a massive deal. That was like, everybody was on eggshells. Everybody was like super nervous that Johnny and June were both coming and everything.
Right. And John Carter, their son, he appeared on.
Yeah, he was an extra.
Yes,
I didn't know that
Right. Yeah.
until recently. The actress that played Ma Ingalls, Caroline Ingalls.
Right.
Karen Grassley is her name, and she talked about John being an extra in that episode as well. So it was like a family ordeal. Like all three of them came.
Yeah.
Incredible. So you know what they said? This is the point that I was going to get to with what you said, Brian. Was that when they showed up to set, they never needed any extra foofy stuff. They were the most down to earth, most humble people, warm-hearted, just touchy, kind of very nice, kind people. And I'm like, it's so nice to hear those things because you can hear it from somebody,
right?
And then I wonder what it was really like. But in this case, it really is like you can't really find Johnny Cash was a jerk. Like nobody ever says that. It's all just
even if he didn't feel good, and I was around him a few times when he didn't feel good, and he actually needed doctor's care, and he would not let an autograph go by. I mean, he wanted to sign, and everybody had a Johnny Cash story for him, and he put up with that. He would smile, and as I've told some people today that women would walk up to him and say, "You're my biggest fan." And he'd say, "I am." Or "You know who you are," And he was so pleasant. He never was rude or arrogant to any of those people. And I won't go into it, but there were probably some times that he deserved to be rude, but he wasn't. He just wasn't. He accepted it and he said, "I don't let the red carpet ever get long," like some actors or entertainers do, But, when Elvis died, it really hurt him. And he told me, I was at Mama Cash's house, and he told me, he said, the last 6 months that Elvis lived, he knew he wasn't well. Uncle Johnny knew that he wasn't well. And he said, "I wished I'd have reached out to him. I wish that I would have made a call or done something because I knew he wasn't well, and that really bothered him. I mean, he was real. You know, he was just a man that cared about everybody that he knew and didn't know. Really,
Was Johnny and were Johnny and Elvis friendly to each other?
they were
I've heard mixed things.
They, of course, you know, back in the 50s, they traveled together, and walked the line. As you know, was Hollywood in some aspects, of course, but in real life, you know, they started together, they toured together. They said that they told me that they would have to pull into a hotel, have enough time to wash their face and hands and get to the show. You know, they were exhausted. That's how the pills came into effect. And but they would wash their hands and face, take turns doing that in the sink, one sink, and go on to the show, and then travel on to the next town. So it was grueling, and but they were close.
Yeah.
But what I'm trying to say is, as they got older, and of course, you know, and I don't mean to brag, but there was nobody bigger than Elvis and Johnny Cash.
Right.
And they lost touch a little bit, and didn't stay as in touch as they wanted to. Once in a while, they'd send remember telegrams?
Telegrams,
back in the day, telegrams,
Heard
not
about
the
'em.
email or whatever.
Yeah.
But they would send a telegram to each other now and then. But Uncle Johnny thought, he said, there's something that maybe I could have done to help save his life.
Yeah.
And that bothered him. You know, he was in his pajamas when he told me that.
Oh, wow.
He said, I wish that I could have done something to help Elvis. But yeah.
Why don't you tell him that story about when I think your dad and Johnny, you guys were in a car and the homeless guy was, just tell that quick. You know, so that, I think that gives a sense of.
Absolutely.
So
you
your
know,
dad, to explain that, your dad is Tommy.
Right.
Tommy Cash.
Yeah, I'm proud of Dad. He had 19 top 40 records and wrote a couple of hit records himself. And he's 83 now. He doesn't entertain anymore, but he's holding his own. You know, he comes out here. Brian had him out many times, and he'd say, "If you don't remember me, would you act like you do?" You know, Dad. But Dad and I were putting mulch around his trees in his front yard, and Ring of Fire went off in his pocket. He said, "Excuse me, my brother's singing in my pocket." He got his phone out, and he said, "Yeah, JR." He said, "What are you doing, Tommy?" And Dad said, "I'm putting mulch around my trees with my son." He said, "Y'all wash your hands and come see me and take me to Walmart, will you?" And Dad said, "I will. June's in New York, isn't she?" And Uncle Johnny said, "Yeah, she's not here." Dad said, "You want ice cream?" He said, "Come get me and take me to Walmart." So we rushed over, and he had just done the Simpsons voice, the coyote on the Simpsons, right? So we walked in, and from the front door, well, the door that we went in, all the way around the kitchen into the dining room was boxes. And I said, "Are you moving?" He said, "I'm not moving. I did the Simpsons, and they sent me all this stuff." He said, "Help yourself." You know, and it was tennis shoes that said Simpsons, shoelaces, shirts, caps, you know, you name it.
Yeah.
So he said, "I don't feel good today. I'm going to go up and disguise myself. I'll be right back." He came downstairs, Jack Vale, with a long black coat on, Simpsons tennis shoes, a pink Simpsons cap, big sunglasses. He said, "You think this will work?"
I
said,
that.
Uncle
I like
Johnny,
your little collar thing that you do. That's
I said, "There's
spot
three
on.
people on this earth that cannot disguise themselves. That's John Wayne, you, and Elvis. It ain't going to happen."
It's not. You'll know exactly who they are.
So we went to Walmart. We walked in the door. They knew his walk, you know. And these kids started hollering, "Mama, Mama, there's Johnny Cash. There he is right there." You know, everybody's screaming, "There's Johnny Cash." And he looked over at me and he said, "It didn't work, did it?" And I said, "No, sir, it didn't." So we get to the ice cream, and he picked out 4 half-gallons of ice cream.
Yeah.
And Dad said, "John, JR, I'm already in trouble with June. One will do." He said, "Tom, you don't know how to eat ice cream. When we get back to the house, I'm going to show you how to make 4 of them work." Right?
Yeah.
We get to the counter, and for some reason, there's 30 managers up there at the counter. And there's this little girl, she's shaking. She's the cash register, you know, girl.
Yeah.
And he knew when you were nervous how to bring you right down. And he said, "Little lady," she said, "Yes, Mr. Cash." He said, "You take cash?"
Oh my gosh.
She said, yes, Mr. Cash, we take cash. And right then she calmed down. She quit shaking. She was fine. So he paid her. As we went out the door, 50 people were yelling, "Bye, Mr. Cash." The managers were scared. They were trying to get the door open, and it opened by itself, So we went out to the car, and what Brian's talking about, Dad was in the passenger seat. Dad was driving. Uncle Johnny was in the passenger seat. I was in the back. It started misting rain. And as we backed out, there was a homeless guy on the curb going through his bag. And I've been homeless. So I knew he was homeless, and so did Uncle Johnny. He said, "Stop, Tommy, I want to talk to him." And Dad said, "JR, if they see you out here, they're going to mob you." He said, "I don't care, Tommy." And he got out of the car, and he went over and sat down next to this guy, and the guy went like this.
Yeah.
And he said, "You're Johnny Cash, you're Johnny Cash." He said it twice. I could read his lips. They talked about 5 minutes. About what, I don't know. And Uncle Johnny reached in his pocket and pulled out everything he had. I don't know if it was $200, $100. I would imagine probably on the $200 side. And he handed it to the guy. He got in the car, and as we drove off, that guy was like this. He could not believe. The sad thing about that is, real quick, I'll tell you, he told everybody in the world that Johnny Cash gave him money and talked to him, and they said, "Baloney."
Yeah.
You didn't see Johnny Cash.
Where did you get that money?
Right, exactly right. But as we drove away, my dad said, "JR, you think he's going to spend that on alcohol or food?" And Uncle Johnny looked at him like he had 4 heads. And he said, "Tommy, I don't care what he spends it on if it gets it through him another 24 hours.
Wow.
That is, nobody said a word all the way back to the house. Yeah. I mean, that's powerful. And that's how he was. He didn't care what you did with that money as long as it was going to help you in some way. And, and let me just say this, and you didn't ask, but I'm going to tell you anyway. He told me many times, he said, "Mark, I want you to do 4 things." I said, "Yes, sir." He said, "You are humble, stay that way." Because we didn't have nothing growing up. If we wanted a toy, we had to make it out of dirt, out of the backyard at Dallas, Arkansas. We didn't have any money. Write your own songs. You can't make a living doing other people's material. Love people, and they'll love you back. And I try to do that. And I think that's pretty good advice coming from Johnny Cash.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh man. What an incredible thing that, like, here we are, like, I'm a little stressed out worried about tractor noises outside, And then Mark comes randomly stopping by and tells us this incredible story. And that story, what's funny is I didn't know if there was an ending. You kept going and going. It was so good, and then it got better, and then I'm like, "Oh, this is the end," and then you kept going.
I'm sorry.
And no, it was so great. It was just like, wow, this is still going. I can't believe it. What an incredible story, though.
No, thank you,
man. No, thank you, man. Thank you for sharing.
If the whole world was like Johnny Cash, I remember when I was 10 years old, my dad got mad because we locked the back door. We didn't lock our doors back then. And we do today. Not only do we lock them, we deadbolt them or whatever, because we have to. And I think it's a shame. Back when we were back in the 70s, early 70s, Jack, I don't know how old you are, but
50.
I'm up there in
50.
age. Well, we didn't lock our doors, man.
Yeah.
And if everybody had the notion back then that, today, we'd be a lot better off. It's a shame that the world's come to what it is, but it is. It's something that we just have to live with, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'd like to tell you a quick story. It's not long, but Cindy tells about the bottles and the windowsill.
About the what?
The bottles.
Okay.
He found, I'm sorry I keep bumping that. He found these medicine bottles around the property. He loved to dig, to look around.
Oh.
And so he said that these bottles that have never been washed, he said you can't wash them, like an old coin, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
But he found these medicine bottles in different bottles, different shapes and sizes around the farm here, and he put them in the windowsill in the house.
Mm-hmm.
And he and Cindy were here he asked to come out here, and they were talking, and he said some things, and she said, you know, Mark, I knew this was the last time he was going to be here. And so the next morning they got up, they'd spent the night, and he said, baby, I want you to take these bottles home. And she said, no, Dad, they've been here 30 years. I'm not going to take your bottles out of here. He said, honey, if you don't, somebody's going to get them. I want you to have them. He went out one door, she went out the other. She came back and put them back, and they're still there today.
Wow.
They're still there today. She couldn't take them. And everybody's left them alone. Brian,
Everybody's
they're
left
still
them
there,
alone.
aren't they?
Yep.
Wow. Wow. What a story. Gee whiz.
Brian owns the guitar, of course, that Carl Perkins played "Boy Named Sue" on.
Yeah.
On the stage at San Quentin. Yeah. What a prize.
Yeah.
You know, what history. You know, and the folks that were just here, we had just 50 people here. They're interested in history. They want to know where Johnny Cash was, where he slept, where he relaxed, where Carl Perkins came, or the guitar, things of that nature. And I think Uncle Johnny would be absolutely shocked at the attention that he gets today, and it's just because he was honest and did what he wanted to out of his heart. You know, he had a rebirth, of course, before he died, and I'm glad he did. He deserved it. You know, he did.
Yeah, man. So I knew about, I knew a lot of his songs and stuff like that, but it wasn't until my oldest, Jake, over there, was just a few years old.
Yeah.
And car seat in the back seat. We were in Sonora, California, and we pulled into this little used record store, and I saw this album called Unchained. And it was a CD. And I looked at this thing, and I'm like, it was the coolest cover I ever saw. And it was the coolest picture to me of Johnny Cash. And I went, oh, I bet this is really good. And it was a used CD. I probably paid $3 or $4 for, I don't remember. And I put that thing in, and we wore out that CD. We listened to that CD until, like, we memorized the song. Him too. Little kid in the backseat. Within a few months, we had played that thing so much. I was singing those songs with my kid. Sea of Heartbreak, Rowboat, all those songs. Rusty Cage, the Rusty Cage. Forget about it.
Oh man,
it doesn't get better than Rusty Cage.
Yeah,
and it was that turned me on to then all of the other American records that started coming out, and we went, wow, the raw, honest. These were the songs, because you could tell that these were the songs that he wanted to sing.
Yeah.
It wasn't produced by some, these were things. And that was Rick Rubin's vision for him, right? Was to get him to sing what he wanted to sing.
Right.
But I'll tell you.
And that reminds me, I believe, and I may be wrong, it was the Viper Room. And he was fixing to go on stage. It was just him and a guitar. And he was looking out the curtain, and he went over and sat down, and somebody asked him, "What's wrong, Mr. Cash?" And he said, "Those are young kids out there. They're gonna be bored with me. They don't want to hear Folsom Prison Blues or I Walk the Line. They're gonna be bored to death. I'm nervous."
Yeah.
And they said he was nervous as a cat going out there. And I've got a recording of it. They screamed the whole time he was out there, "We love you, Johnny. We love you." And he couldn't do any wrong. Every song he played, they cheered and just went crazy, And, it shocked him,
He's a legend.
Yeah.
Somebody that,
I'm proud of him.
Yeah.
And my dad.
All of his hits from back in the day were great. But it's funny because I don't know if I would be as into his music as I am today had it not been for the American records. I think it's so cool that here was this point in his career where he was a little unsure about certain things.
Right.
And then all of these albums just start going, and then this whole new generation rises up who may not have known him otherwise.
Absolutely.
What a cool story.
And Brian knows, couple of months ago, an 18-year-old girl came in here, and she had Johnny Cash's face tattooed from her wrist all the way up to here to her top of her shoulder.
Wow.
And I said, that comes off, doesn't it? She said, no, that's a real tattoo. I said, how old are you? She said, I'm 18. I said, you're 18 years old and you've got my uncle's face tattooed all the way up your arm.
Yeah.
She said, that's right. He was cool.
Yeah, man. And everybody knows it.
I mean,
indisputable, man.
Yeah. Who else? I mean, amazing.
I just thought, and he toured with Billy Graham. I mean, it was like Billy Graham was at that time like this, like, wow, you could do no wrong, kind of minister. And then you've got Johnny Cash and you've got the picture of him going,
right,
and you've got this hardcore, like, who's singing about Delia. Oh, Delia.
Right.
If I hadn't a shot, poor Delia. I mean,
know it.
Some really hardcore stuff.
It is,
and it was the story of redemption. And his friendship with Billy Graham that kind of, and then they did shows together. It's incredible to me,
You know why Billy Graham called him? It was initiated by Billy Graham, and Billy Graham was having some tough times with his own son, who was kind of a rebel, and I think even now he flies an airplane, all this. And he said, I just want to talk about raising my son. And that's how that whole thing, friendship, kind of started.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
And, the other thing a lot of people don't realize that Johnny Cash was a student of the Bible. He actually didn't he take a correspondence course and got a degree?
He did.
And I was talking
He was ordained.
Yeah. And I was talking to Cindy about it, and she saw his certificate. She said, why aren't you hanging it up? He said, well, and she said, hang it up. That's important.
Yeah.
He was a little shy about it. But then he goes and writes a whole book about the Apostle Paul and his man in white, his road to Damascus. And the irony of this whole thing is at the end of his life, see, I had the Mama Cash house. And when we first moved in, there were all these marks everywhere because he was in a wheelchair. And his wheelchair was marking up the walls and everything.
Oh.
So he was in a wheelchair, could barely see, okay?
Right.
And yet he writes the song about the Apostle Paul, who on the road to Damascus, the light went blind. And I just thought that whole thing kind of resonated with him. And he loved reading. You go here to the farm and you look at his library. That's why he's a great writer, because he read a lot. Well, he couldn't read. So the kids would have to read to him. So, to go from that strong, and I don't know if this is true or I should even say it, but my understanding is after he died, his kids took that wheelchair and threw it in the lake. He didn't like the wheelchair. I don't think anybody does. So our hearts should always go out to people that have those kinds of issues. But that's, he had a tough life.
Mark, can we go try to excavate that wheelchair? We need to go to that lake.
I've already been down there, bro, but I knew the Cashes would kill me if I sent a scuba diver down there.
The girls told me anybody brings that up off the 80-foot cliff there, they're going to have to answer to them. So I probably wouldn't try to.
Yeah. That's not.
No.
That's their private.
I guess some things are better left alone, I guess.
For sure.
But Brian had the same idea.
Just say, Ben, my producer over there, you just said that you're talking about how you sort of feel something when you go to areas here. That's how I felt when I went to the Mama Cash house the very first time, because Brian told me. When I found out that these were the last months that Johnny and June had spent, and this is where the bedrooms, the bathroom, like you go walk into these places, and it's really, I mean, for you to hear this, I know you feel the same. I can't imagine family member.
But we would be at the Mama Cash house when Brian owned it, and we'd hear these noises, and they were loud. It was a thud or this, and there's no doubt in my mind that they were there.
Is that possible, Brian? What do you think about that
Well,
stuff?
now you're
I
getting
always,
no.
yeah,
Well,
this is a totally different topic. This could be a segue into something else.
but I'll tell you this: I do believe in angels,
Uh-huh.
and throughout history, angels have manifested themselves at different times.
Yeah.
And all I know is when his mother, Johnny, was very close to his mother, and when she was lying on
Carrie.
her deathbed, and they were singing, what's the song there? Come Angel Band.
Yeah.
And Joanne told me this. I actually have this on film if you want to use it. And that Joanne, he went to Joanne like the next day and said, did you see, what was it? I got to get the, did you see that angel? In other words, he felt, and that how everybody had moved back from her. She died in the kitchen. Everybody moved back because they knew an angel was there to retrieve her and take her to heaven.
I was there.
Yeah, and then everybody moved back, and then but they were reflecting. You know, you don't remember that moment, but they knew the moment.
Yeah. Now,
because there was something going on.
now Carrie, so Carrie Cash, she died in the kitchen,
Yes, she did.
right?
Yeah.
Because they brought the hospital bed in there.
Right, hospital.
She
And
loved the
and
kitchen.
she wanted
She
to have.
did.
She loved the
There was a-
kitchen.
you know, I got to say, there was a great big picture window, still is there, that she loved. And it looked out over to Uncle Johnny's property across the street. And she loved that picture window. And one of the reasons she loved that window is there was a gold record or two on the wall. And every afternoon she would open the blinds and people would stand out by the mailbox and they could see those gold records and they'd take pictures. And she knew that they wanted to. And she knew that they enjoyed those pictures. And they got sun bleached, didn't they? You know, from the sun. But people, every afternoon, I think 1 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock, she opened those blinds. And so people could take pictures of the gold records of Folsom and San Quentin on the wall there. And she loved people.
Yeah.
And she was proud of Uncle, and, you know, Papa Cash used to say, you know, yes, John is our boy, but we're proud of all our children, you know. And they were, and Grandma was very proud of her children and grandchildren.
How close do you feel that they got in Walk the Line to the character of Ray Cash?
Well, to be honest with you, we were very disappointed in that aspect of it.
Okay.
They portrayed Papa Cash as being a mean-spirited person. I never saw him be unkind to anybody, including fans. That I wish they hadn't have done that. He did tell, I think, Uncle Johnny that day that he was in shock when Jack got killed. You know, y'all were supposed to stay together. This is your fault, maybe. You know, but he was. You know, he never said they took the wrong son. That was Hollywood.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't like that. I never saw. He was very kind to all of his grandkids, all of his family.
And didn't before the house? I know the house in Hendersonville burnt down now several years ago, but
Right.
didn't since they lived across the street? Didn't Johnny? He'd like go over when he was in town and have coffee with his dad in the mornings. And
Oh,
stuff
absolutely. I was in the house many times when he came in his pajamas.
Like that. Yeah.
And I'd say, Uncle Johnny, you're in your pajamas. He'd say, I just got back from Europe, Mark. I'm tired. You know, and he would visit. And I was there when he gave Mama Cash a gold watch for her birthday. I'll never forget it. I was standing there and he said, Happy birthday, Mama. And he slid that box across the counter there. And she opened it up and she said, Oh, JR, you know, I don't wear fancy stuff like this. It was solid gold, you know, and all. He said, Mama, I don't care what you do with it. It belongs to you. Now it's yours. And he walked off and hugged my dad, you know, and you know, so yeah, he came up and I wonder what people thought as they drove by. Cause you'd hear, they would stop traffic. People would honk their horn and he's getting out of his Mercedes in his pajamas to come into Grandma's house. You know? So,
You know, one thing, back to this, like my mother always built my dad up. That's one thing that I think so much we could really learn about Johnny Cash. No matter what you say about his dad, he always showed him respect, right?
Yeah, he did.
He called him sir.
Yes,
Is
he
that
did.
right?
Yes, sir, he did.
I mean, so they're, you know, that's gone in our culture.
and he
right
said,
now.
yes, ma'am, to mama. You're right.
You know, I
Mhm.
mean, he knew that that's an authority that God put there. And he then, he treated his dad with respect. And to me, if there's one of many lessons he could teach the culture, that's one of them.
Mhm.
Because you know how people talk about their dads or talk to the dads.
Mhm.
That's one thing that I think is fundamentally going to weaken our nation, because we need strong dads and fathers and mothers too, of course. But anyway, I always felt the other thing is I've been told, and I believe this, he was kind of a lone guy. When he came out here to the farm, June came out a lot of times, but he was often here by himself. So many stories.
Yeah,
He took walks out here by himself.
he sure did.
And he says in his autobiography, the final one, you know, people always say this to me too. Do you love the land? It's your. And he said, no, we don't own land. We belong to the land. And he knew that's a very finite thing. Every generation, somebody takes care of that land, but ultimately, it's God's creation. And you know, he never felt like this is my place. So, you know, he let a lot of the highwaymen and some of these guys hang out here. They didn't all do appropriate things when they were here. But
Well, when he wasn't here,
yeah.
when Johnny wasn't here, they might do some inappropriate things, but not when he was here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's pretty strict.
I never really thought about it, but I guess that's true. It's a weird concept when you put it in that perspective to think that we can pay for and own part of the earth.
Yeah.
Like
You're
who
right.
originally owns it? Like besides God, like
Yeah.
that's a weird thing to think about. I never thought about that.
You know, there was a great Russian story that I've told many people. And it's this guy that's obsessed with land. And we have a lot of Americans that are obsessed, you know, movie stars that, you know, want 20 super cool houses. Anyway, and he wanted a big piece of land. So he goes to the owner and says, I'd like to buy it. He says, I'll give you a super price. But you have to walk the property and go around everything you want. If you want that lake, you walk around the lake. The only stipulation is you got to get home before the sun goes down. He says, okay. So he's out there lusting after the tree and the land and the beauty and thinking, oh, what a good deal I'm going to get. And then all of a sudden, the sun going down. So he starts running. And he falls dead. So the moral of the story is, how much land does a man need? Pretty much about 12 feet by 6 feet. And I think Johnny knew that. So
Wow.
every one of these homes that, you know, and I'm so blessed to be here, but I know that one day I'm going to fall flat on my face. I'm going to go to heaven, and it's not going to be mine. Now, we need to be good stewards of the land, what's going to happen next and so forth, but we don't really own the land. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, God made this, but it's weird. He made us, he put us in charge. What a lousy job we've done, huh? And so now you talk in the Middle East. Isn't it interesting that all the discussion, dispute, a lot of it is about who owns the land.
Yeah.
And a lot of people at the end of the day leave God out of that equation. And I do feel there's a historic tie to the land of Israel, to the Jewish people. But on the other hand, I feel for the Palestinians too. You know, I mean, everybody wants land. That Russian poem, there's something to it, but we're all going to die, and we can't take one thing with us. I'm going to tell you one more story that I've been wanting to tell this. Not Augustine. Who's the guy that conquered a lot of Western Europe? I'll think of his name. Anyway, Alexander the Great. He called his generals in just before he's going to die. He said, I have 3 final commands. He said, okay. He said, command number 1, I want you to take all my wealth and put it along that path, my funeral, where I'm going to walk, because I want all the people to know that I'm not taking anything with me. That was his first, this is a true story, his command. Secondly, he said, as people see me, I want my arm out in the wind, because I want everybody to know that I'm not taking anything with me. And then his third thing is, who's going to carry his casket? He said, I want the smartest, greatest doctors to carry my casket. They said, why? He said, because I want everybody to know when death comes knocking and every man is appointed unto death in God's timing, that the greatest doctors on earth could not have saved me. So he didn't want anybody saying, well, if he had better doctors. No, bring the best doctors, and they would carry his casket. Those are his 3 last commands to his generals.
Interesting. Yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Huh. I didn't know that.
I've got a picture you'd love to see at home.
Wow.
It's this big, Brian, and it's a beautiful hearse pulling a U-Haul trailer, but it's out of this world.
Yeah, yeah.
It ain't gonna happen.
No.
But you know what's weird about it?
Huh.
As obvious as that is, nobody believes it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody believes it, or we wouldn't live the way we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nobody believes it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the weird part.
Yeah, man. I think about that all the time. I look at some of these people in like Hollywood or global elitists and all these people, and I always think there's caught doing such evil things, especially now because we have so much information we can see, but and they're 80 and 90, and I would think, aren't you getting a little nervous?
Yeah.
Like, are you thinking about what might happen after?
Right.
Or I guess they don't believe in anything after.
You're pretty much, that's why it's a committed, both agnostics and people, they really adamantly do not believe in God, but they're scared to believe, because if they do, then they got to spend a lot of their life thinking about other things. They don't want to go down that road.
Right.
Yeah, that makes
But
sense.
that doesn't mean, because the Bible says there's no person with an excuse. Everybody is self-evident, the creation. So we all know there's a God. It's just that we don't want to believe it. And we make a choice not to follow him.
Well, we're too comfortable pleasing ourselves, I think, in this world. The way we treat each other is so
Oh,
unkind.
Mark,
It's
I
hard.
love you. I hope you don't think that about me.
No,
Okay.
it's just true.
We've had some ups and downs in our life together.
Well, the
but-
road rage that's going on. And I mean, that's somebody's mother you're yelling at, somebody's brother, sister. We don't think about that.
Yeah, Mark, and I've done stupid things in traffic.
Yeah.
And I think about that every time. I'm like, it makes me remember, like,
Yeah.
don't be so, you have no idea what people are thinking about
No,
if they just,
Or
somebody
what
in the
if
family
that
just
were
died.
your mother?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I wouldn't want
Exactly.
somebody treating my mom that way. And I love the saying, what is it? Be nice to someone today because you just don't know what they're going through.
Yeah.
I love that. You don't. And like Uncle Johnny had said on that picture that we have, don't condemn somebody because you haven't walked in their shoes, man.
Mm-hmm.
Don't criticize somebody.
I feel that way often when I go and do, because I've been doing pranks, hidden camera pranks for 15 years. And I love it. It makes people laugh. I enjoy it. But sometimes, Leslie Nielsen a long time ago said in interview, I love that guy.
I do too.
He said in interviews, it's a risk you take. He was a big time prankster. Everybody loved him.
Yeah.
And he upset people every once in a while. He would do something that was disgusted by a fart sound or whatever. And he goes, that's a risk you take. You can't control what people are going through in their life. And if you hit them on the wrong day, even if you do something harmless,
Yeah.
they don't think something is funny, and then
Yeah.
they blow up at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's true. You don't know what people are going through. So whenever I get like a negative reaction to something,
Yeah.
I try not to let it irritate me too much. You know, it's a little sad, but you never know.
Yeah.
People are going through all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
So you got to always be aware of that.
You know, I'll go down the sidewalk and I'll see somebody and I'll say, hello. So that's just me. And some of them will just stare at me a second, like, what are you speaking to me for?
Oh, yeah. It's bizarre. Yeah.
I don't know you.
Yeah.
But a lot of people say, hello, right back.
Uh-huh.
And that's a good warm feeling.
Yeah. Those are the people like,
Yeah.
like you. But it's sometimes I'll be in a store and people are just so uncomfortable. They don't want you to be around them.
Right. Right.
People, they want you to leave them alone, and
Yeah.
people will be shopping, looking at for their own stuff by themselves in an aisle, and you'll
Right.
like get a little too. When you come up the aisle, they're just like, oh, and
They'll leave. They'll walk away.
Mark, I swear, I've done this as an experiment before, and I will find people to themselves, keeping to themselves in an aisle, and I'll say, like, to Jake, I'll say, watch this, and I'll go walk up, not too close to him, but just in the aisle next to them, behind them. They will kind of look a little bit, and they'll just be done. Or if they see me walking up, they'll immediately go the other way, and then I will leave, and they will come back.
Isn't that something?
Once they know it's
Wow.
clear,
Man.
and no, Brian, it's not because they know who I am or that they're in trouble. I know. I can see Brian wanted to say something. There's
No,
something going to
no,
happen.
I was just listening.
But yeah, it's true, man. And I think we need more of that. Other countries.
Yeah, and one thing that irritates me, and I have to say, my wife doesn't let me get online much because
Yeah.
they don't treat me bad.
Yeah.
They probably do. I don't see it, but the way they treat each other. This
Oh.
18-year-old kid, he bought a Telecaster electric guitar, right?
Yeah.
And he put it on his workbench at home, and he said, "I'm going to film this. It's too shiny. It wasn't real expensive, but I want to relic this thing." And what that means is, of course, make it look old,
Yeah,
right? Make
yeah.
it look like it's been through the fire before.
Right.
And so he starts taking it apart, and he says, "I'm learning to play guitar." And his cat jumps up on the workbench, is watching him. He goes, "You want to help?" And harmless. I mean, it's his guitar. He tears this thing apart. He relics it. He put it back together. And I'm watching this. Of course, he sped it up, And I thought, good deal. That's great. And he'll love this guitar. And so I went down to make a comment, say, "Man, good job. Keep going. Learn to play,
Yeah.
And I scrolled down, and they were cussing him. "You ruined a perfectly good guitar. What's wrong with you? You need to be in a mental institution."
Yeah.
And you need to do something with that cat. And every comment was nasty.
Wow.
And I lost it.
Yeah.
And so I put on there, "Pay no attention to these people. It was your money, your guitar, your job. You do what you do. Don't pay attention. Love you, man. You need me, call me." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because it hurt me so bad. What business is, why
I know.
why did they want
I
to
don't
talk
know.
to him like that?
I don't know.
But
I don't know.
there is when people, we all have a heart and a soul, and until God fills that vacuum, we're just not happy. We're not satisfied, and so there's this frustration. Not everybody knows what it is, but until you're fulfilled in Jesus, everything's bad news, everything's terrible. But, that's why one of the great, I think in Psalms, it talks about the deer pant. We're supposed to pant for God, just like a deer pants
water.
for the water.
Yeah.
Well, Mark, I think you need to go now.
Yeah, I think Brian's done with me. Can I have a gumball? Can I have a gus? I love your machine here.
Well, I don't know. Are we done yet?
Almost.
Okay, but they want to go into like high finance and science and stuff. You know what I mean? So,
Don't you love him? You never know. I've worked with him for 8 years. I got stories.
I bet you both have stories about each other.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, we've been butting heads for 8 years.
Not too bad.
But at the end of the day,
I love you. You know that. I do love you.
but it's really satisfying when customers come and they're happy.
Yeah,
and
I
we
know,
get a lot
I
of
know.
happy customers.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We do. We've put a lot of effort into this. Brian has. If it wasn't for him and Sally, this could not be possible. And and I'm not bragging or patting myself on the back at all, but they wanted me to cash, and I'm happy to do it. I love people. One woman said, "I've never touched a celebrity before," and I said, "No, wait a minute. Wait, my uncle was a celebrity. I'm not. You're welcome to touch me, but if I ever start thinking like that, we got a problem, So, but they want to meet a member of the family, and I want to meet them, and 99.9% of them are great people that come through these doors, aren't they?
Oh,
Brian?
yeah.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
You know that generation, they're 80 years old, they come on the bus. These are the nicest.
They are.
They're just like
Yeah.
they're fantastic people. They're positive. They're optimistic.
Yeah.
Even though they can't hardly walk.
Yeah. Well, and I just wish that they would realize that Johnny Cash was. One woman said to me the other day, she said, "Are you him?" And I said, "Well, I used to drink a lot. Who are you looking for?" And she said, "Are you Johnny's nephew, Mark?" I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "You ever meet him?" He was human. Yes, I met him. I met him many, many times.
Did you ever meet him?
Yeah.
What, after she knows you're the nephew?
Yeah,
Did you
But
meet
I'm going to tell you
bless their
something
hearts.
very interesting. I've been doing this for 8 years. And Mark does his show. Sometimes he'll introduce me or whatever. I've never had one person ask for my autograph in 8 years. It's like, move over.
No,
Hey, Mark.
no.
I'm serious. You know what? So he's really valuable to us. 'Cause
Yeah,
they
yeah.
really they're connecting with Johnny when they, and I remember when Cindy Cash was here once, and one guy said, "I guess this is as close to Johnny as I'm ever going to get."
Yeah, yeah,
There's something to that
yeah.
that means something to people.
Yeah.
So, that's a role. We'll call it a burden, whatever responsibility.
No, I know
but-
what you
You
mean.
know.
I felt that way about Michael Landon.
Yeah.
And to the point where I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter one time to his son after he died, Michael Landon Jr. And Michael Landon Jr. not only responded back, but took like a piece of typing paper, folded it in half, and literally wrote out this beautiful letter
Really?
in response to my letter.
Wow.
And
Wow.
it was a way that I felt like at the time I could like connect with Michael Landon in some,
Yeah.
small way or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I totally get that. But this has been fun, you guys. I would
Yeah.
love to listen.
Hey, is the bus group waiting for you over
No,
there?
no.
Oh, they're not.
No,
Okay.
No.
Okay.
I did my thing with them, and
Oh.
yeah, I'm sorry I interrupted y'all, but thank you for
No, I
No,
wanted
thanks,
to.
thank you
man.
for letting
That's
me
why I
sit
called
down.
Hey,
you
listen,
over.
it was
Good
great.
to see you, Jack
Good to see
Vale.
you too, buddy.
Yeah, man.
All
Love you,
right,
brother.
Take care. You too. All right. Are we good, guys? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
We're still. Are we still recording?
Wait. I have one
All right.
story.
Thank you for. Let me. Oh, you have another story.
I have one story.
You have
I
another
want-
story. Yeah. Okay. All right. And we'll say goodbye.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brian.
Okay. So I want to tell a story about how I even learned about Johnny Cash and got interested.
Okay.
First, I told you about that painting in my friend's place. The other thing is, my friend introduced me to a poem called The Hound of Heaven. Many people think it's the most beautiful poem ever written. And it's about
How old is it?
it's from the 19th century.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's a poem about an opium addict that's running from God. And God relentlessly pursues this guy. But he's running. He's a drug addict. And believe it or not, back then, opium was the drug. In fact, people thought it was actually good for you. So I did a documentary in London about The Hound of Heaven. the author is Francis Thompson, and it's really his story. And I was doing some study as to how people related to that poem. I ended up doing 3 films on it. A modern adaptation, you've seen that, and the document. Turns out that a lot of people I saw say this is a story very similar to that of Johnny Cash. So that kind of resonated with me because Johnny Cash had issues, substance abuse issues. And to some extent, when you're in the middle of that, you're running from God.
Oh.
And then I said, I got to do a poem about The Hound of Heaven, a film, and get Johnny's. It all seemed like it was all meant to be.
Yeah.
Why are you looking at me like that?
No, I'm still listening. I didn't know if that was the end of the story or not.
I end in different ways.
That makes sense because I've noted one thing about you that I've noticed is everything that you do has some kind of special meaning and ties into something else.
Right.
Yeah, I've picked that up. That's awesome.
Hey, was that helpful?
Oh,
Mark? I knew
it was great. It was a nice surprise.
Opportunity.
It was terrific. But so let me close with saying this. There are so many other things that I want to talk to you about. So
we haven't even got started.
No, I know. This is like an introduction, and I don't know how long we were doing this for, but a while. And the next time we do this, I want to talk to you about stuff like your, I want to talk to you about Elvis stuff. I want to talk to you about.
Now you're going to put out that
yes
2-minute thing. Did Sally send it to you?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We would have to get through this really quick because we didn't even talk about that in this episode.
Yeah.
So we either need to wrap now, which we probably should, and then I'm thinking, well.
I could tell that story real quick. Because Sally sent it to you, you can put it up.
Let me see if I can quickly set the stage.
Okay.
Okay, for people to understand this story. I don't want to get into the dismantling of Colonel Parker's house because that's something I want.
Book back.
Okay. Sorry. Because that's something I want to spend a lot of time on.
Okay, all right.
Okay. But you are tied into Elvis in a lot of different ways. And one of the things that you felt was important was to, there's a movie that you're working on right now, in fact, okay, that focuses more on Elvis's Christianity, okay? Now, and relationship with God. So let me say this, though. You were friends with Chance Martin.
Right.
Chance Martin was very, very close to Johnny Cash. In fact, would you say they were very close friends? I mean, if not best friends.
I'll tell you, Waylon Jennings, Cowboy Jack, Chance Martin, they've got, and maybe Carl Perkins. They
were all tied in
Anybody
together.
that tells you now they were the big friends, forget it.
Okay, so Chance, has it been a few weeks, a couple weeks since Chance passed away?
That's right.
Okay. And you had spent quite a bit of time with him. In fact, you got to know him really well.
Yes.
And one of the times that you spent time with him, Chance knew Elvis, correct?
No, but Chance filmed Elvis in 71.
Filmed Elvis in 71. Filmed him.
Filmed him.
On what did he have? Like a camera?
Yes.
Like just a video camera or something? Whatever he had.
A Super 8 camera.
On stage at a concert.
At a concert in 1971.
Okay, now finish. He lost the footage.
Okay. So one of the things, and I've probably been to his place 100 times. Because remember, I've never met Johnny Cash. I learned it,
way later.
Cowboy Jack's dead, Waylon's dead.
Yeah.
Family always has a family bias. He was my key guy. So anyway, I was talking to him, and he always complained. He said, Brian, I had these Super 8s, and I took a video of Elvis Presley right at the edge of the stage and even behind, and somebody stole it from me. Now, he's been telling me this ever since I've been here, 8 years, okay?
Yeah.
Now, we're talking something 50 years old.
He was convinced it had been stolen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So he had a bunch of these Super 8s.
Yeah.
And my wife kept saying, Brian, he said, well, a lot of personal family stuff. So he would never let me. And I have a great curiosity. I had a sense I'd find something. Couldn't have it. So I just finally one day I said, okay, Chance, I'll give you X dollars. I want it, good or bad. And my wife, so anyway, I took it home. And within 10 minutes, I was just looking, you know, there's these like cartridge things. And all of a sudden I saw Elvis. Now, I can't describe it, but there's a little film to talk. What he had done, obviously, he had put the thing in backwards so you couldn't see the Elvis name.
Yeah.
So for 50 years, he thought it was gone.
Yeah.
And I found it. And I have a video of him talking about that. And like he said, it just blew his mind. But it didn't blow my mind because we're working on a film, The Spiritual Journey of Elvis Presley. And and it's called In the Shadow of the King. And you know who the King is.
Yeah.
King Jesus. And what really motivated me is when I found out he had 3 Grammys, 2 were for How Great Thou Art. You know, it's amazing. That song, you can be in the middle of a department store in Japan. You'll hear How Great Thou Art going over. Nobody knows what it means, but there it is. So it doesn't surprise me at all that after 50 years, at his appointed time, God made sure that I wouldn't listen to my wife and I would buy those Super 8s. Now, there was a couple other really cool things. There's one where John Carter and his dad are holding hands and skipping. Fantastic stuff.
Wow.
But that thing, it's only about, minute and a half.
Yeah, well, we're going to play it right here. You have to see this video.
Yeah.
Okay, go.
But it was confirmation to me that this ain't just a ego trip. God's with us on this.
Yeah.
Because if this movie is done well and it goes to the world, people who have really misjudged, I believe, Elvis, will see the spiritual part of his life. We all know about the crap. We don't have to talk about that. But he genuinely did love God. And in 50 years, look, if he had seen that, he would have sold it 50 times over. Mm-hmm. He says only to you, but, if he needed money, he would have sold it. And there it was. Mm-hmm. We're going to go over, I've had so many of those things that are absolute, where you just see God's just putting his hand into my business, stirring it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So that's actually a perfect segue into a future episode. Another show we'll talk about all of the kind of Elvis tie-ins and everything else. That's just like the tip of the iceberg. But thank you for coming. If you guys, whoever's listening or watching, be sure to check out The Jack Vale Show on all of our socials and all that stuff. And we'll see you next time.
Kiss my cat.